and I do that on a regular basis, what's going to happen to that tomato is it will be full of a lot of flower, but not very much fruit at all. The fruit are like tiny. They're minuscule. They're not even worth anything. And there's this process of taking out certain bits. And of course, Jesus refers to that. You know, I don't know if you realize, but even the bits that are taken off of the tomato, their very life is given to them in the first place from that tomato plant. So anything that's taken away, it's come from that to start with. It reminds me of Job, and where Job is a man in the Old Testament where he was a very rich man, and God tested him. And God came to him, and I think it's about 2 verses. This is at the beginning of the book of Job. There's a whole book about it. If you've not read this recently, go and have a read. And in about 2 verses, Job, who is this very rich man, has lost all his sheep, all his donkeys, all his children, all his ox. I think that was everything that went. And that all happens almost instantaneously. And this is what he says afterwards. He said, let's imagine, because I think before I talk about what he said, let's imagine what that is like a little bit. Because some of us can identify, particularly if you're linked with Jesus. And this is a big thing. Are we people who understand this, that God's, the Father's joy, purpose is producing fruit? He wants abundant fruit in us. And the beginning part, he says, he cuts off every branch that doesn't bear fruit. Areas in our lives, obviously, that don't bear fruit, he can cut them off. And while what sometimes is even harder to get around is that it says here that the areas that are producing fruit, he cuts bits off of that as well. It's basically, he knows what he's doing. He's wanting to bring about good stuff. And yet that process of removing things can be really hard and confusing. And, I could just imagine, that's got potential. And I wonder if some of us have said, that thing that has occurred, that God seems to be dealing with in me, there's perhaps some things we're pleased to get rid of. And I guess that's things when God removes things, difficulties and boundaries, and sorry, it's not so much boundaries, but boulders in our lives, illnesses perhaps. He answers prayers over different situations, and we're like, yes, I'm so good that that's been taken away. I'm so pleased that God has stepped in and he's done so much good. But I wonder if when taking away the bits which we wanted and which were precious to us, they're the bits that sometimes are quite a lot harder to get our heads around. And here, stop, and then there's cars suddenly appear. I remember him saying, right, when you decide to go, put your foot on it and go for it. And he was one of the best gardeners that you would ever meet. I mean, he did run his own nursery. He did sell it, and he'd do it as a business, which is why it's kind of in the bloodstream. My dad's got an amazing allotment and in his garden, and his garden looks really good. And my garden's kind of getting there. We've just moved. It's looking all right. And I went there, and he taught me to drive. I was very aware he grows the best strawberries. I mean, these strawberries are like monsters. They were so beautiful to look at. Their taste was fantastic. And there was just a massive abundance. Every Harvey do, Grandad in that season would bring these bowls and bowls of strawberries. And it doesn't matter how much you pick and take, there was still more strawberries. And, you're talking about a lot of money, aren't you? So I knew he was good. And the thing that I didn't like, though, was when I was there staying with him, he asked me to put up a runner bean poles. And he, of course, likes to do them in his particular way. And I had to nail these tiny little nails into pieces of wood and join the pieces of wood together so that this structure would enable his runner beans to run up them and produce fruit. And I was at an age where my practical skills are not as good as they are now. And I just remember whack, 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 miss, whack, getting my finger. And then whack, 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 miss, and I got my... After about 20 minutes, half an hour of this, my hand is really hurting, and I'm frustrated, and I'm like saying naughty words like poo and things like that under my breath. I was as good as gold, you see. It's as bad as it got. And I was really feeling angry, resentful to him. I remember there he was down by his strawberry bed doing something or other that looked really, really easy, while I had the really hard job, which was painful, and I couldn't do it, and it was frustrating, and it just seemed to last forever. I just didn't get anywhere. And afterwards, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to produce good fruit. And it's the same with God the Father. Whether you know him as a Christian, as a follower and an obeyer of Jesus, or whether you don't know him yet, he is someone who knows what he's doing. He knows how to bring about the fruit in people's lives that look amazing. And yet the thing is, when we're getting there, that process, fruit does not develop quickly. And there's times when it is difficult you have to wait for it.